We're about to dive into a cold case that's been sitting on ice for more than 500 years. It's got everything: high stakes political games, a shocking betrayal, and a brutal murder in a place that should have been safe. Our story begins on a freezing winter night in Scotland. So the year is 1483. Specifically, January 23rd. Just picture it. A bitter wind is whipping across the Scottish coast, and a heavy snow blankets everything. It is a scene of deep, almost profound silence. And where are we? We're at a Cistercian nunnery in North Birdwick. Inside, the nuns have just finished their evening prayers. The monastery is this little pocket of peace set against a dark, cold, unforgiving night. But that peace, it's about to be completely shattered. Because out of that darkness, a group of armed men arrives. And listen, this wasn't just some small band of thieves. We're talking about 18 knights with their followers, basically a small army surrounding the monastery walls, their torches just flickering against the cold stone. But they're not here to raid the nunnery. No, they have a very specific target. They've come for one man, a pilgrim, a diplomat, and a trusted advisor to the King of Scotland who's staying inside those walls. And when he hears them demanding him by name, the man doesn't hide. He actually steps forward to face them. But before he gives himself up, he makes a request, a final plea that, honestly, it speaks volumes about the kind of person he was. His words are so simple but so powerful. He offers himself, but only if the attackers promise they will not harm the terrified nuns who are huddled inside. He's literally negotiating for their lives with his own. The knights agree, they give him their word. And then, in an act of just profound betrayal, they draw their swords and they murder him right there in the monastery courtyard. The killers just vanished into the night, and for more than 500 years, their crime has remained totally, completely unsolved. So you have to be asking yourself, who was this man, and why on earth would someone send 18 knights to kill him? Well, to understand the murder, we have to understand the victim, and his story begins a long, long way from Scotland, in one of the wealthiest cities in the entire world. What's just so fascinating about Anselm Adornes is the sheer scope of his life. He was born into this incredibly powerful merchant family in Bruges. But he wasn't just some rich guy. He was a serious political force. He served as mayor, and he held this crucial diplomatic role as the guardian of Scottish trade interests. This was a man who moved easily between the worlds of commerce, diplomacy, and raw power. But beyond all the wealth and the political savvy, Anselm was a man of incredibly deep faith. In 1470, he undertook this incredibly dangerous pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and when he got back, he was so moved by what he saw that he built the Jerusalem Chapel in Bruges, a stunning recreation of the holiest site in Christianity. So this wasn't just a powerful man, he was a deeply pious one too. So how does a pious diplomat from Bruges end up murdered in Scotland? Well, to figure that out, we have to turn our attention to the political landscape where Anselm would meet his end. Because back in the early 1480s, Scotland was a kingdom that was literally tearing itself apart. The entire kingdom was split right down the middle by a rebellion. On one side, you had the reigning monarch, King James III. But leading the opposition, well, that was his own brother, the Duke of Albany, who was secretly being backed by English agents. It was a classic Civil War scenario, brother fighting against brother. And in this deeply divided kingdom, Anselm Adornes was not a neutral party. Not at all. He was knighted by the king, he was given land by the king, he served as his advisor. There was no question, he was the king's man. He even helped lead the royal forces at Linlithgow. And in the time of rebellion, that kind of loyalty, it puts a giant target on your back. And all of that brings us right back to that fatal night. Back to the monastery, where a man of both faith and politics found himself cornered by enemies he might not have even known he had. That's one of the key questions in this whole mystery. Why was Anselm even at the nunnery in North Berwick? Was he there seeking some kind of spiritual peace after the fighting at Linlithgow? A quiet moment for prayer? Or was he hiding? Maybe someone had told him to step away from the political inferno for his own safety. We'll probably never know for sure. Just think about these final moments, because they're so telling. A small army shows up in the dead of night. They call for him by his name. He shows this immense courage by just stepping forward. He bargains for the lives of the sisters, They give him their word, and then, in an act of pure, cold-blooded ruthlessness, they murder him. And just as quickly as they came, they were gone. They just melted back into the darkness, leaving behind this scene of brutal violence in a place of prayer. No one could identify them. They left no clues, no trail to follow. Nothing. Now, in the aftermath of a murder like this, you would expect a massive investigation, right? A kingdom-wide hunt for the killers of a high-profile advisor to the king. But that's the thing. That is not what happened. The case just went cold. And the details of what happened next really show you the deep personal tragedy behind this political hit. There were no arrests. Ever. No justice. Anselm's body was buried in Scotland, but in this final, poignant act, his heart was actually removed and sent all the way back home to Bruges to be buried next to his wife. They left behind 16 children, an entire family shattered by an act of violence that was never, ever explained. So who was behind it all? Well, historians have their theories, of course, but there's no smoking gun. The prime suspect is the king's rebellious brother, the Duke of Albany, who wanted to get rid of a key royalist. Others point the finger at English agents, trying to weaken the Scottish court. Or, hey, maybe it was just rival nobles, or even business enemies. The truth, it seems, died that night. And if there was any hope for an official investigation, it probably died for good a few years later. Because in 1488, Anselm's patron, King James III, was himself murdered during another rebellion. As Scotland plunged deeper and deeper into chaos, the unsolved murder of some foreign advisor just faded into history. And this is what makes the case so compelling for historians. We know the what, the where, and the when with incredible clarity. We have the date, the location, the victim's name. But the who and the why, they remain a complete mystery. It's like having the first half of a story written in perfect detail, but the final pages have just been ripped out. And so, Anselm Adornes remains divided, even in death. You can go and visit his memorial plaque in Linlithgow, Scotland, where his body rests. And you can visit the incredible Jerusalem Chapel in Bruges, where a small stone heart in the floor marks the spot where his own heart was finally brought home. His story is still there, but it's unfinished, a puzzle that stretches across centuries. So what are we left with? Well, maybe the lesson is that loyalty can be fatal, and piety is no shield against violence. It's a really chilling reminder that the most brutal acts of history don't always happen on a battlefield. Sometimes they happen in the quietest of places. And that sometimes the most dangerous place in the world is a monastery at night.